Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. So, the unvaccinated in Quebec will face a heavy tax. The exact amount we don't know, but the warnings keep coming. It's going to be substantial. So, what's your reaction? Would you like to see something like this in Ontario? And while thinking about this, I want you to keep something in mind, and that is that this idea of taxing behaviors that cost the healthcare billions of dollars, this idea is not new. There is already a very well-established precedent. In fact, there are a number. Smokers, for example, are very heavily taxed to help compensate for the money that it costs to treat the effects of tobacco addiction. Long ago, society decided, listen, if you are going to continue to smoke, not only are you going to, in all probability, cost the healthcare system more when we have to take you in for lung cancer, etc., heart disease, but secondhand smoke, we find, also damages other people. So there is a considerable cost. If you wish to continue to smoke, there is a considerable public cost to our healthcare system. So we are going to heavily tax you, which at least will help compensate. So that precedent has already been set. You may not know, I think most smokers know, that in Ontario, the so-called sin tax, this is the tax above and beyond GST. So the sin tax is almost 20 cents for every cigarette purchased. On a pack of 20 cigarettes, this is almost $4. That is the sin tax. So it pours, let's face it, $4 a pack, even though not nearly as many people smoke today, still pours billions of dollars into the general tax revenue of the province of Ontario and the federal government. Some of the money, of course, is used for healthcare. So at least to a degree, those who smoke are being taxed because they smoke. And it's the same situation for alcohol. The tax on domestic wine, for example, that is wine made in Canada, is about 10% of the retail price. The so-called sin tax on imported wine is about 20% of the retail price. Once again, this is an extra tax above and beyond the GST that is charged at a so-called sin tax. The money, now, there are two purposes for these taxes. The number one purpose, supposedly, was to, in the case of cigarettes, discourage the use of tobacco. Whether it was effective, I don't know. The same thing held true with alcohol. They were hoping that if you increase the price of alcohol dramatically, that there would be less alcohol addiction. Whether that was worked or not, I don't know. But there is no question that billions of dollars is being raised extra by smokers and by drinkers every time you buy a bottle of wine or a glass of beer or a bottle of beer. I didn't check. I don't know. The problem with trying to find out what the tax on beer is that there's a list about 12 miles long, depending upon whether it's a microbrewery. So I didn't bother. Let me just say that the tax on beer is heavy as well. So no matter what you drink, you are contributing to the healthcare system by heavy taxation. So the principle has already been set. Now, I hear some people saying, well, if we're going to tax people who carry out behavior that overburdens our healthcare system, we had better start taxing obese people. Well, we're not taxing people on the basis of how much they weigh. It would be probably impossible to do. But a lot of people don't know that there is a heavy taxation on sugar. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the only cause for obesity, but it's certainly a contributing factor to obesity, sugar. So, and to some degree at least, even obese people certainly those who consume a lot of sweets and sweet drinks and so forth, they are helping the healthcare system as well. Now, the other argument is, well, are we going to charge an extra tax for people who drive dangerously? Well, we don't do that, but I'll tell you what we do. um, the insurance companies pretty well take care of that. Now, it's true that the money doesn't go into general revenues, except insurance companies pay tax as well. But the fact of the matter is that if you drive dangerously and involved in an accident, particularly more than one, your insurance rates are going to go way, way up. And in fact, if you're really a dangerous driver and you cause a couple of accidents, we may remove your driver's license. So even there is a penalty, even though there may not be a direct tax to help support the healthcare system. There is a penalty. In other words, what I am saying is that whether you are a smoker, a drinker, dangerous driver, if you're obese, if you are taking part in actions that are a risk and pose a risk to the healthcare system, a burden to the healthcare system, in almost every instance, at least to a degree, you are paying a tax, an extra tax. And you know, drinkers and smokers. Some people argue that in fact the extra tax they pay probably more than compensates for the extra burden that they place on the healthcare system. We would never know. All I am saying is that the precedent is set. So with that in mind, what is your feeling? Um, do you think that this is a good idea? Is it fair? Is it unfair? Would you like to see something like this in Ontario? Civil rights organizations I can see are already protesting, saying this is an attack on civil rights. But it seems to me that there are any number of laws, regulations that we have imposed, which could be interpreted as affecting civil rights. I can remember the battle against having to wear seatbelts. Exactly the same arguments were advanced. There's no reason I have to wear a seatbelt. This contravenes. I have a right to do whatever I want with my body. The fact of the matter is, if you didn't wear a seatbelt, you were much more likely to end up in hospital with costly repairs than if you did wear a seatbelt. So long ago, I think what 99% of us now agree to wear the seatbelt. In fact, most of us, when you get into a car, it's just automatic. And I can also remember the big argument, and I took part in this, about the idea to essentially ban cigarettes in almost every public place. I was opposed to banning cigarettes. I'll be honest with you. I may have been wrong on this. I was opposed to banning cigarettes in Canadian Legion halls. I was afraid that it was going to bankrupt most of the Legion halls, and that it wasn't fair. That most of these old vets had been smoking all of their lives, and it was unfair to stop them. But that's a side issue. The fact of the matter is that there was a big debate. The argument was this was an attack on civil rights, but we decided that society was better off, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no question that the unvaccinated are placing an extra heavy burden on our healthcare system. I was looking at fresh data this morning. It is true that about 50% of people being admitted to hospital now have been vaccinated at least twice. But on the other hand, about 50% of those in hospital are unvaccinated. Now, and you say, well, there's proof it doesn't. Well, wait a minute. Uh, in Ontario, it's only about 8 or 9% of the population that has not been vaccinated. So if 8 or 9% of the population accounts for 50% of all hospitalizations, I think you see the point. I might also point out that about 80% of all people with COVID in ICUs in Ontario are unvaccinated. So we have a situation where 8, 9% of the population is not vaccinated, refuse to be vaccinated, but they account for about 50% of all COVID hospital admissions and about 80% of all ICU admissions. So there is no question whatsoever that the unvaccinated are placing an unwarranted, I believe, unjustified burden on the healthcare system. But the question is, should they be penalized? Should they have to face, as they will in Quebec, an extra tax? Um, John, have we got any responses yet on this?
We absolutely do. Loading up more comments as we speak right now. But the number to call or text is 613-413-2217 on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, etc. You would post your comments where you normally would, and we'll pop them up on the screen. Wayne says, Lowell, I thought you were awake. Sad. The government has reeled you in as well.
Well, what do you hold it just a minute? The government hasn't reeled me in. The government will never reel me in, so stop insulting me. I'm not insulting you. I've asked a question whether you think this is feasible. I have pointed out fact, and that is that there is heavy taxation on liquor, tobacco, and sugar. So how I really resent people like you claiming that somehow I have sold out. I have never sold out to anybody. I must tell you that in my career, I have resigned twice rather than back down. Okay, so don't talk to me ever about being reeled in by anybody. Nobody reels me in. All right. You may disagree with me. In this case, I don't know what there's to disagree since I have simply pointed out fact. If you can't accept fact, then stuff it up your ass. Go ahead. I've had it. I've had it with this.
Rod follows up with, how many boosters do we have to take before you say no, Lowell?
You know what? You people are getting me really ticked off again. My question is a very simple one. Would you support this action in Ontario? If you don't, that's fine. I'd love to take your call. I'd love to take your comment. But if you insult me again, I'm going to just, you know what? Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
We've got
See, this is the problem with anti-vaxxers. You expect us to have sympathy and support and empathy for you, and yet this is the way you treat anybody who even just asks the question. Go ahead.
We do have a phone call coming in. I haven't had a chance to screen it. You want to go to the phone?
Sure.
All right. Hi, you're on with Lowell Green. What's your name, please?
Hey, my name's Sean.
Hi, Sean. Go ahead.
Hi,
Lowell.
Sean. What do you think?
Hey, Lowell, how's it going?
Go ahead, sir. Don't ask stupid questions, Sean. Right to the point. Come
I'm
on,
having
buddy.
a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, okay. What's on your mind? No, he's just playing with me. See, this drives me crazy. Why are you anti-vaxxer, or not all of you, but why can't you respond to a reasonable question? You got to try and bug me. You got to try and get me, smart ass. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I think he's having some technical issues. Anyway, let me see. Attaboy, Lowell. Don't take crap from anybody, says Kim. Let Quebec be the guinea pig. Ontario to follow or not, says Chrissy. Suzanne is having a good chuckle at your comebacks. An email from Gilles. He says, will we start taxing the elderly? We know they or will be a burden on the healthcare system.
Well, wait a minute. Hold it. Let's talk about that. The fact of the matter is that we elderly have contributed taxations. In my case, I have paid millions, nay, tens of millions of dollars of tax in more than 70 years. I have been working since I am 16 years old and paying tax. And you don't think that I have paid my fair share? Come on. Can we not be reasonable here? Why, you know what? All I'm asking is, would you support this in Ontario? I've stated facts. Is it not true that we heavily tax smokers? Is it not true we heavily tax drinkers? I mean, why are you jumping all? You know why people are jumping me on this? Because I'm pointing out facts that embarrass them. Go ahead, please. Let's see what else, what other idiocy lies in store for me today.
Well, here's one from Murray. He says, I wonder where free speech went. We can't even have it on a talk show.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I guess he's making a comment that
you can't insult me. You can't insult me, and expect me to take it. What do you think I am, a 5-year-old here? You can put down, What are you going to go after me with? Go ahead, John. You know what? I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna stop the program very soon if this doesn't stop. Go ahead, John.
You've got a lot of
support. This is not progressive at all. I'm asking a reasonable bloody question. Quebec is going to institute this. Would you favor this? If you're opposed to it, let's hear it. Let's hear your rationale. Stop insulting. And that. Go ahead, John. I'm getting sick of this.
Hazel says, I agree. They should have tax for non-vaccinated. Lizzie says, I agree to a point. If they show up in ER, then by all means, charge them for the services. Andre says, Saskatchewan is the only province so far that said no way. Anne says, I want less government in our lives, so not sure how I feel about this. Joshua says, one can make an argument that anti-vaxxers are being used as scapegoats of a broken system. Anti-vaxxers may be part of the problem, but it's not a new problem. Ann says, tax them for sure. Fed up with their attitudes. Craig says there's a big difference between taxing alcohol and smokes. This is penalizing those who choose not to participate with the failed experiment. We've already observed the social construct of those who are not vaccinated. They have been removed from what those vaxxed can participate, such as going to restaurants, gyms, or even a place of work. This new attack will do more harm than good. Kathy says, by doing this, the government is opening a big can of worms. Kim on Facebook in to say, are we going to tax all anti-vaxxers or just COVID anti-vaxxers? Lots of people still won't get basic vaccines for themselves and for their kids. Dean says, in your examples, you're being taxed on something you do. An email from Lisa. Lowell, the fact is boomers have been staring straight down the barrel of this problem with healthcare shortages and LTC shortages and housing shortages for over 60 years. This is no surprise to anyone over 60. You got caught with your pants down around your ankles. The chickens are coming home to roost, and with your hands out, there's nothing to fill it.
You know what? Hardly anybody here. Craig has responded. I disagree with him, but I appreciate the fact that he was reasonable in his arguments. That's fine. That's what we're looking for. But the question is, would you support this in Ontario? Why is it so difficult to answer this question? If you have some doubts, I can understand that. But I mean, we're wandering all over the place here. Listen, hone your mind in, please. Be razor sharp. Would you support this idea in Ontario or not? I'm going to tell you right now that the government of Ontario listens to this program and would very much like to hear your reaction to this. We've had 2 or 3 people say yes, but all I'm asking for is a definitive answer to the question, not some ramble someplace out on the Yellowstone Park. Go ahead, John.
Craig is back to say, all right, what about these obese individuals who come into the emergency? What about the hip replacement because it's prematurely worn out because the individual is fat? Come on.
Well, I already talked about that. It is true that we don't charge, but there is a very heavy taxation on sugar. So to some degree, some obese people at least are being taxed. But yeah, maybe that's a very good argument. But it is also true that we do tax smokers. We have come to the conclusion that smokers present a real problem to the health care. Not only that, but how about the fact that we force people to wear seatbelts? Because this, we feel, lessens the burden on our healthcare system. So there is a precedent there. That's the only point that I'm making here. Go ahead, please, John.
Liz says Dr. Moore just said Ontario would never support this.
Okay.
Haven't seen that report, but thank you, Liz. Sonia says, no, I don't agree with this, and I am vaccinated. Let me see. Chris says 9% is still a little over 1.3 million that are still not vaccinated. That's just so many. I think that the province should continue to heavily restrict the unvaccinated. If they end up in hospital due to COVID, then charge them at that time. So no, I'm leery at this point to tax the unvaccinated. I'm getting my booster next week, by the way, says Chris.
Okay.
SB emails in to say CERB should be tied to your vaccination status.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I'm just reading them, Lowell.
Okay.
Mike says most of the anti-vaxxers don't get the shot, not because they think it's an experimental drug or because they think it's a chip in it or something like that. I think it's because they just don't want to be told what to do. What they don't realize is there's already all kinds of laws that prevent us and make us do things that we do to make everybody safer. So by putting this tax in place, I believe more people will roll up their arms.
One of the really interesting things that we saw in the province of Quebec was when the government announced that you had to be vaccinated in order to buy liquor. Guess what happened? The number of registrations, the number of registrations for vaccinations quadrupled in one day, which indicates to me that a lot of these so-called anti-vaxxers, they're really not all that serious. I mean, if the argument that this is good for the public health, your own health, etc., if that doesn't sway you, but the fact that you can't buy a bottle of beer does, geez, what does that say? I mean, what does that say about these people? Go ahead, John.
Sean did call back, by the way. He was on hold for a couple minutes there. Sean, we apologize for that. I think we had a bad connection. I got a lot more comments to get to, Lowell, but we've also got to get a word in here for your friends at Shields, please.
Yes, good old Shields up there. Now, yeah, thank you. John has put their website up on my screen. I gather yours as well. Let's deal particularly with appliances. Doesn't matter what it is. One of the things that they're specializing in now in appliances are these air fryers. And we're agonizing here in our household whether, and Debbie is looking, where could we put one, et cetera, et cetera. They have a wonderful supply of air fryers, all different brands, different makes, different sizes, different capacities, and different prices at Shields up in Pakenham. I still get people saying, well, wait a minute, they're up in Pakenham. Yeah, but they've got a huge warehouse. There is what is called an in-stock dealership. In other words, they have these appliances in stock. You don't have to send off to Hong Kong for them or down to Philadelphia. They've got them right there in Pakenham, which means they can have them in your house within the next day or two. Very good pricing. Compare the prices. Go to shields.ca, SCHEELS.ca. At least, folks, they're local, they're good, they're honest, the prices are very, very competitive. At least give them a chance. Okay? Support local if you can, and here you really can. John, let's hear more.
Before I get to the comments, can I just weigh in on the air fryer debate in your house?
Sure. Yeah.
Santa got me one for Christmas.
Yes.
Do it.
You
Do
like
it. Sean's back. Sean's very upset. He again waited on hold for a few minutes. He says Lowell seems to only want to hear his voice while Buddy reads comments. Oh, how far you've fallen, Lowell. Sean, we had you on the air. You hung up. You hung up, Sean.
He hung up. This is the second time Sean has done this. So my feeling is that people like that, they're just trying to bug me. This is they're not working. They got nothing to do. So they say, oh, let's bug Green. It used to happen to me on CFRA. I get wise to these guys. If I'm wrong, I apologize, Sean. But this is the second time this has happened. Go ahead, please.
Sean, I'm balancing texts. I'm balancing Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, emails. You got to be a little patient. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, my name's not Buddy. It's John. Somebody just called and then they hung up. So, Sean, you see, there you go. Jean-Francois says, when a government solution is taxes, then the government becomes useless. What is this world coming to? Learning from Trudeau. Alan says, air fryers.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Just a minute. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think that very many of you have ever objected to the heavy tax for smokers. I don't think very many of you have ever objected to the heavy tax on drinkers. So how does it different? The rationale is that number two, there's two things, a rationale with smokers. It'll discourage smoking and it'll help compensate for the extra costs. With the vaccination, it's the same thing. They feel that taxing will encourage more people to be vaccinated. And also, if you aren't vaccinated, help to pay for the extra costs that you will incur. I repeat, and maybe you people don't like the facts that I am presenting here, but this is not news. The fact that it's everywhere in the press today, that about 50% of all hospital admissions are unvaccinated, about 50% are vaccinated, but only 8 or 9% of Ontario's population is unvaccinated. So the fact is that somewhere between 8 and 9% of the population account for about 50% of all hospitalizations and about 80% of all ICU admissions. Folks, I'm not making this up. I'm sorry if the facts offend you, but those are the facts. You may disagree, you may agree, whatever it is, but those are the facts that we're being given right now. Go ahead, John.
Kelly is on Twitch. She says, I support the tax to be imposed on anti-vaxxers. Peter says, Lowell and John are the best. Take no crap. Right on, Peter. Dean says, mandating wearing seatbelts is not equivalent to making someone put something into their bodies. Anne says, I think that I would rather more restrictions than taxation. We support it 100% for Ontario, says Anne. All provinces should follow suit. We need this. We need to get this terrible, terrible health issue dealt with quickly and efficiently. I'm a senior with serious health issues, and I'm having a very hard time getting help due to the overload in hospitals. A text at 613-413-2217. Deb says, yes, I do support what Quebec is doing. Another texter in to say, yes, I support this in Ontario. Let me scroll down here. Murray says, the jab was never proven, yet everybody jumped on it. You won't hear any bad things on mainstream media, so do your own research. Murray?
Wait a minute. Read that again. Says it's unproven?
The jab was never proven, yet everyone jumped on it. You won't hear any bad things on mainstream media, so do your own research.
Who are you supposed to research? Who do you?
BitChute, Lowell. BitChute. Come on, man.
I mean, anybody that doesn't think that vaccination has then if the vaccinations have not worked, how do you account for the fact that before vaccination, people by the hundreds were dying in long-term care? Now, I know they were old, and some of you people don't give a damn. Okay, let's be honest. Most of you do, but some of you don't. But the fact is that before vaccinations, people were dying literally by the hundreds. In fact, some 10,000 have died in Ontario, the bulk of them in long term care. Since the vaccination, hardly any deaths. How can you possibly, with a straight face, look me in the eye and say that vaccinations are unproven? How can you? How do you account for what's happened in long term care? Forget the rest of it. How do you account for the fact that before vaccinations, people were dying by the hundreds, by the thousands in long term care? After vaccination, very few deaths. How do you account for that? Please look me in the eye and tell me vaccines don't work. Okay? I dare you. Go ahead, John.
Peter says vaccinations do work, and when you get COVID, you will beg the doctor for one. Can you imagine the world right now without vaccinations, says Mike. Dean says mandating wearing seatbelts is not equivalent to making someone putting something into their bodies. I believe we read that comment before. I apologize if that is a repeat. What is considered
No, but I understand that. And
Yep.
yeah, okay. The fact of the matter is, though, that it still was something that a lot of people felt contravened their civil rights. I have a right. I don't. You're not going to put a strap across me. You're not going to tie me into my seat. So the argument was the same there, that this was a contravention of civil rights. We decided that it was in the public good. I found it uncomfortable at first. Doesn't bother me now, or you, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is that society decided this was in the public good, just as we decided it was in the public good to stop smoking in public areas and to tax smoke, etc. Go ahead, please.
I think a lot of people, they don't see the tax on cigarettes. It's buried, they just
It's
buy it.
about
same with alcohol.
$4.
So yeah, I know it's significant.
$4, about almost $4 for every pack of 20 cigarettes is a sin tax. The 13% GST is on top of that. So the smokers do contribute. There's no question to the tax base. No question about it. Go ahead, John.
Roxanne is on the phone. Let's take a call. Roxanne, go ahead. You're on with Lowell Green.
Hi, Lowell.
Yes, hi.
No, I think you're right. I think that the people that are unvaccinated should pay an extra tax. I smoke. I know I pay a sin tax.
Yeah, well,
I like to have my glass of wine, and I know I pay an extra tax and things
Yes.
like that. But
yes.
if you're unvaccinated, you know that you are potentially putting other people at risk, and you're putting yourself at risk. And if I need to pay taxes for putting myself knowingly, I guess, in more danger than other people who don't do the same thing, well, then you should do the same thing.
Thank you for your call. Appreciate the call. Very succinct. John, we got some more comment?
We got lots of them, Lowell. I could write a book on this one. Let me see. Jean-Francois says, smoking is a choice to put something in your body. A tax to not take something in you. How is this the same? By the way, we need to have this conversation. Thank you very much for your time. And
Wait a minute. I'm on. That doesn't make sense. If you smoke, that's putting things in your body.
Yes.
We tax you for that. If you, I don't. All I'm saying is that we have decided that there is a public good involved here, and if you're going to smoke, in all probability, you are going to add cost to the public health care system. So we were going to tax you for that. Ditto liquor. I don't see what the arguments here. Go ahead.
Sean is back saying you seem to really like to chat with people that really have the same exact opinion. Sean, you hung up the phone. I'm done with you, Sean. No more comments being posted from you. Let me see. Ann says, I think I would rather more restrictions than taxation. Alan says, air fryers are awesome. And Pakenham has a new gluten-free bakery. Mark says, I really don't agree with the tax. This whole thing is about your right and freedom. I have a real concern on how fast this vax is rolled out. You have researchers that say a vax take 5 to 20 years to develop and test. Okay?
Oh no! Oh my God! He's not rolling out that old argument. Wait, do you realize that in Canada there is now more than 70 million vaccination shots that have been given? Around the world, it is in the tens of billions for 2.5 years now, almost, that this has been, and this guy is still saying that it's untested. Good God. Ay, 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 ay. Go ahead, John. We're almost out of time here.
All right. Nancy asks, are they going to turn the prisons into concentration camps for the unvaccinated? I don't know where that came from, Nancy, but okay. Care to
I'm
tackle
not
that one?
suggesting that. All I'm asking is they're going to tax these people. They have decided that unvaccinated people are placing an unwarranted burden on the healthcare system. And if you choose not to be vaccinated, you still have that choice. But we are going to choose to tax you and help you, force you to help pay for your extra costs. That's all.
Let's get last word, to Rob. He did try to call in. He emailed us instead. He says, I do not have a problem with it in principle. I have a different option. I would like to see all treatment for diseases that we have a vaccine for delisted from OHIP. We delist all kinds of things. One of the first things Doug Ford did was delist travel outside of Canada. If you choose not to get vaccines, you either buy insurance or take your chances and pay for the treatment, just like we do for funerals, drugs, eye care, travel, and many other treatments.
All right. Well, thank you all. Most of you anyway. This is very interesting. I haven't said where I am on this issue. I have concerns about it, but there's also no question that the unvaccinated are creating an unwarranted burden here. And so we've got to do something. I'm not sure if the taxation is the answer or not, but let's see what happens in Quebec. Let us see. I'm going to wait to make judgment to see what happens in Quebec. If in fact we find out that another 5 or 6% of Quebecers did get vaccinated, and thus the burden on the healthcare is lessened, then I think that'll give us a message. If it doesn't seem to much affect, that as well will be a message for us. Thank you all. I'm going to be gone for the next couple of days. Medical situations, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, anybody wants to complain about the cost, I point out once again that I have been paying taxes. I began my first job that I had to pay tax when I was aged 16. I'm now 85 and I'm still paying tax, folks. Thank you all. We'll be back.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.